Welcome to the No Fear podcast and the No Fear live broadcast. I'm your host, Tony Lauer. If you're into mindset training, performance psychology, personal development, you'll dig this new format. No Fear Live is a unique broadcast, and it's different from the No Fear podcast. We decided to go live because we wanted to create the opportunity to interact with people like you all over the world, where anyone can log in and ask questions, and in some cases, you may even get invited into the show. The great thing about the live broadcast is that it's much more personal for the listener. That's you. Remember, self-defense isn't always about a confrontation with someone else. The first and most important fight is winning the one inside your head. Dun, da, da.
All right. That is an awesome intro. Man, cool, I love
that. A lot of people like it. It's actually, the intro is actually sometimes better than the show. But we can keep playing it. We can loop that. So I don't know. We haven't talked about the new StreamYard setup, but what I started doing is I took the No Fear. You've been on No Fear before, but it's always like Zoom and private. This one here goes out to LinkedIn, to Twitter, Facebook groups, Facebook, YouTube Live, so people can actually log in, ask questions and stuff. So I'm going to blaze through a bunch of questions I have for you, and then we'll see if any listeners log in. We changed the time to accommodate your schedule, so we'll see if anyone logs in here, but whatever. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Busy times, but feel extremely fortunate. That's for sure.
It's so crazy. I'm not going to waste time. I told everyone we have 30 minutes. The gatekeepers that protect your mind and your time were very clear about that. So I'm mindful of that. And I think it's also it gave me an idea. I got asked by another guy who I respect deeply in the business space. He said, "Hey, do you want to come on my Instagram show, Instagram Live with me?" I said, "Yeah, that's great." I go, "Like, how long is the show?" He says, 15 minutes. I'm like, "What? Like, what are you going to talk about in 15 minutes? But I like this idea of super short because it forced me to think of like a bunch of questions for you that I'm hoping you haven't been asked repeatedly, because I'm sure most of the stuff for you, Jack, is when's the new book coming out, and what's it like to write a book, and tell us about the character, and what's it like working with Pratt, and so I want to kind of do something different. First question.
I talked to somebody really about recently about time and scheduling and all these people that have questions or want 5 minutes, and it's never 5 minutes, and I want to help everybody type thing. And I talked to someone who said they have somebody, and I forget who it was, but it was somebody out there in the business space who gives 5 minutes, and you have your call, and there's no chit chatting, there's no anything. You are on it. You have 5 minutes, and then he's off, and I was like, that's pretty aggressive, but that. I don't know. Maybe there's something to it.
I experienced it, and it's weird because it changes the dynamic when you become a celebrity, right? And
I think of myself that way for anybody that just sees me nodding. I'm not agreeing. I'm just like I'm fortunate. I just feel like I'm an author, a writer, and love what I'm doing, and but. Your point, I understand your point.
You've retained your humility, but you're a celebrity, and so if you're recognized at an airport, you got to talk to somebody, you got to sign autographs, you got to take a picture, and then that becomes contagious. Like suddenly, hey, who's this guy? And there's a certain status people get to where you can't walk around without security, or you got to hide and run and sneak around. It's cool because your books and the story and the message and everything has inspired so many people and galvanized people. But I promised that we wouldn't talk about that. But going back to your 5-minute thing and the business thing, I've got a friend who's a very, very successful business coach. Ridiculous amount of year to get trained by him and stuff like that. And I've become, friends with him from the tactical side. And at one point early in our relationship, I had a question for him, and he said, "Hey, I've got 5 minutes. You can call me at this time." And it was that experience. It might even, I'll talk to you offline. It might even be the same guy. Because I got on and I went, hey man, like it's so good to connect, and I really appreciate your time. And it was good to see you at that other event. And so I had, and he goes, Tony, in 5 minutes I'm hanging up because I got another call. So stop jibber jabbing. And what's your question? And I was like, whoa. And it's just for anyone listening out there, and maybe for you to think about. With my team, I tell them, hey, when we're talking business, I just want the coordinates for the airstrike. I don't want you to say, hey, yeah, I'm in a lot of trouble here. I think I'm surrounded by bad guys. I'm out of ammo. Because all I'm thinking is, I can't rescue you yet. I don't know where the fuck you are. And so in business, very often my team will go, blah, blah, blah. Hey, sorry to bother you about this. And like, cut that part out. What's the question?
Right.
So, and then it's social. If we're having a cigar and a drink, it's not like, dude, you got 5 minutes to smoke the cigar.
Right. Right. But when your day is stacked up and you're like, and then you have the kids, and then you have the dog, and then you have,
exactly.
life, and then you just kind of need to get through some of these things.
And that's actually the third to last question that I had for you. But because you brought that up, let's go there right now. I've been trying to write a book for decades, and I haven't written one. And you've written a bunch, right? I have kids. You've got kids. You're very hands-on. So you've got this writing, you've got this travel. You're still very involved with military colleagues. What do you do to manage it? Because there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's always juggling. And maybe semantics. But how do you do that?
I don't know if I have a how yet. I just do, and I'm constantly exhausted. I prioritize, certainly, and anything for me, even though it's not the most healthy way to go about it, drops to the bottom of that list. And that's just how it is, especially during this time when you want to capitalize on momentum, you love what you're doing, and all that. So I'm sure there are better ways to do it, but I just prioritize. I have a 5-meter target, meaning it's the closest one, and that's the one I have to do. Sometimes that shifts throughout the day, so I remain agile at this point. I don't say locked in to any schedule that's going to hinder growth in any way. So I don't know if I do it the quote unquote right way, but I'm doing it in a way that seems to be working for our family and for a readership and for an audience that's trusting me with their time they're never going to get back. So I need to make sure that product, that book, is the best that it can possibly be. And in this case, I blew by a couple of deadlines because it was longer than the other books, and that's just what it took. And I'm not going to get to 100,000 words and say, "Oh, time to wrap this up." It's about
right.
the number of words that it should be. No, that audience, the readership, who is trusting me with their time, deserves more than that. They deserve everything. They deserve my heart and soul into this product right here, because they're never getting that time back, and they only have one ride on this planet. So I think about that constantly. So it's juggling, just like you said. I don't know if you ever get to a point where you're like, I don't need to juggle so many things anymore, or I don't know if you just keep doing it, or you just, I'm just adapting as I go. I guess that's the best way to say it.
Yeah, just like battle, right? No plan survives first contact, and you just flow.
Yeah, you got to adapt. You got to adapt, otherwise you're not going to be able to capitalize on that momentum.
Are there outside of, like, I've tried to connect with you a couple of times in the past where you went, hey, I'm in writing mode now and I'm going away to do that, and I'm in a bubble. Are there other things? So you're writing, I mean, your writing's outstanding, and you've got huge fans, and it's nice to hear this empathy you have for them, because it's not like, I want to get another blockbuster up here, so I'm going to sell out and do this here, so it's bubblegum and create this franchise. What other things are non-negotiable in your life, like in terms of your fitness, your training, a time with your family, wife, the dogs?
Yeah, well, quite a bit's negotiable, I think, as far as that stuff goes, because of that adaptability. But what's great is that I don't have to compromise on anything. I guess maybe on scripts, because it's such a team sport when you're doing a script as compared to a novel. A novel is only me. I only have myself to blame if it doesn't work. Nobody from Simon & Schuster or my agent says, you know what you should do over here is this, I think. would you mind laying off this a little bit? I think you might be upsetting some people. There's never anything like that. I have 100% complete creative control. So when I say no compromise, so there's no compromise there. So I guess maybe but when you're working with a team, so I don't know if compromise is the right word. I never really thought of it in those terms. I just thought of it as a team of people coming together who are all exceptional at what they do to make the best product possible, because it takes a team to work on a script and cast and go into production and go into post-production and then market and then get this thing on a screen. So that takes more than one person.
Right.
And by its very nature, you're working together, and some things you are good at, some things you are not. You are learning constantly. I am anyway. I'm a student. I was a student of warfare for my entire life. I want to make myself the best leader and operator I possibly could in the teams. And today I want to be the best husband and father I can possibly be. I want to be better at those things today than I was yesterday. I want this next book that I'm writing now, book 7, to be better than the one that's coming out here on May 16th. And that's just always a student, always learning, always applying the lessons of the past to the future, hopefully in the form of wisdom. But it's it's go around here. But yeah, I feel fortunate that I don't have to take a sponsorship. I don't have to, we had no product placement in the show. People think that there is, but there's not product placement. It's just things that I use, things that I like, companies I want to support, but it's not, so it's all pure. I want to keep it pure. I don't anything on Instagram. No one pays me to do anything. I love gear. I just have my whole life. I did in the SEAL teams. In the SEAL teams, by necessity, you want the best gear possible for your guys as you go down range to give you any sort of advantage possible over the enemy. So that's just stayed with me. So it's very natural to incorporate that into my life with my family, into what I share on social channels, into the books. But there's never a pay type of a thing. It's things sponsor the podcast, and that's sort of a deal. But on Instagram, when I'm talking about something, maybe someone sent me a knife and they made 5 of them in their garage and they want to be a knife maker one day. And so I want to help that person because I think that's cool that they're going after what they love, and they took the time to make this for me and send it. And it's so cool. And I'm a knife person. And so anyway, it's just very natural for me. So I like to do whatever I can to help other people, and it comes from a real spot.
I love it. I'm obsessed with analyzing, studying ways to keep people safer, the self-protection side. And I could be like at dinner or having, getting in bed, getting ready to go to sleep, and I get an idea for something and my brain just goes, and I got to get up and I got to write or enter something in my phone and go remember this or whatever. Is that the same for you? Like you see something, you get an idea, you make a note, and this will be in a book somewhere. Like where do you? There's one of my questions Jesse asked, my wife Jess, who steals all the shit that you send me. She said how much of Terminal List was real, right? And obviously, it's probably you can't disclose what. I mean, it changes some of the magic if I go, we made this part up, right? Like if I always tell people, like when we do scenario training, people ask me, hey, did you let me hit you there? And I go, if you have to ask, that's the magic. Like you weren't sure, right? So like if someone's not sure if something's real, it means you guys did a really good job at replicating what could be legitimate violence. So I don't know if
I'll take the first question first. Yeah, the first one, it's on the way here. I dropped the kids off at school, rushed back to the house because I had a few interviews, but I thought of something on the way. So I pulled over, pulled down a road, pulled off onto the dirt, and I sent myself an email. I have an email address that's only not for the books. And I have another computer that is one that I just write on that has that email address on it. So it's right up. That's why I'm pointing
writing that down. So good.
So it doesn't get mixed up. Yeah, it doesn't get mixed up with the emails coming from the company that I bought one T-shirt from, and now I get an email every day for the rest of my life asking me if I want to buy another one. It doesn't get mixed up in that sort of a thing.
Right.
It's only for the book, and it's not business side of anything. It is only for writing. So I sent myself an email on the way here, and then I pulled back onto the road and kept going just so I wouldn't forget it. I have a notebook where I write some things down on as well. So in case I don't have my phone with me, and oftentimes I don't really like being connected to the phone all the time. So I have a notebook that's specific for a book also. And I have that email address and that computer, and I change the computer out for every book as well. So it's starting with a clean every single time. Then I stack the other ones over here so I can go back and be like, oh, I know exactly where anything having to do with True Believer or Savage Son is. It's on one of those computers, and I can just pick that one up like a file folder or something back in the old day. Like you'd keep all your stuff together in one file at your desk or something like that. So I do that. And then getting back to the realism side, I think that's why these books, well, the first one resonated with Simon and Schuster, who sees thousands of these things every year, and why it's resonating with readers, and why the other books are resonating with readers as well, is because even though the narrative is made up, the narrative is fiction, the feelings and emotions that my protagonists have come from a real place. So if James Reese, my protagonist, gets ambushed in Los Angeles, California, I go back to what it was like to be ambushed in Baghdad, Iraq in 2006. And I take those feelings and emotions and apply them directly to a fictional narrative. I don't have to go find someone that was in an ambush and then ask them questions and then have those answers get filtered through other interviews I've done, movies I've seen, documentaries I've watched, books I've read, and then go into a fictional narrative. No, it's coming all from my heart and soul and going right into that page. So when people read it, they say, wow, this feels real. That's because the feelings and emotions are coming from a real place. And for the show, for Chris and Antoine, what was most important to them was to highlight that modern day warrior mindset, so that someone who's been downrange to Iraq and Afghanistan, they can crack that beer at the end of the day, put their feet up on the coffee table, turn on the show, and at least know we made an effort to make a show for them and not for Hollywood critics. So it was all about, there's always going to be Hollywood hot sauce. You're making a show and it's fictional. But we wanted to maintain that foundational element of the mindset of a modern day warrior. So that was always our intent every single day. We talked about it every single day. And everybody on set that had a military background, from Ray Mendoza, who did our technical advising, to Jared Shaw, my buddy from the SEAL team, who gave the book to Chris, and the reason that the show even exists, and who started Boozer in the show, Max Adams, Army Ranger, who was a writer on the show. And now we're all together doing the spin-off series and then rolling that into True Believer, second season of The Terminal List, my second novel. But all of us every day were thinking about that authenticity piece, keeping it grounded in the realities of modern warfare and making it for that person who has gone downrange over and over and over again over the last 20 years.
Amazing. Amazing. That is a beautiful segue into this question. At what age did you know you wanted to join the military?
That's the only thing I can ever remember wanting to do. And I found out about SEALs at age 7, but even before that, I knew I wanted to join the military. I think it was just in my blood. It was in my DNA. But then also I had some influences early on from my grandfather. He was killed in World War II, but we had his medals. We had his Marine Corps aviation wings. He was a Corsair pilot, and that's the plane that would have the gull wings that you'd fold up so you could fit him on the aircraft carrier. Had black and white photos of him with his plane, him with his squadron. Had the silk maps that they gave aviators back then, because if you had a paper map and hit the water, it would just kind of disintegrate. Right. But a silk map get wet, you still can use it. So I had all those things. So I had physical things to connect me to him. And then I had the influence of popular culture, World War II movies. And there was a show on TV called Black Sheep Squadron that I watched with my dad. And that was Robert Conrad portraying Marine Corps Corsair pilot Pappy Boynton. And, back then for my dad, he couldn't find anybody who had served with his father. So he never got to meet his father. And there wasn't a Facebook group you could go to, and there's a reunion of the squadron coming up, and find out about that thing and get curious and want to know what your dad was like, or for me, what my grandfather was like none of that stuff existed. So my touch point with that generation and with my grandfather was sitting down and watching that show with my dad, or watching a World War II movie with my dad, knowing that someday I'd go in the military, even very young. And then I find out about SEALs at age 7. And through an old black and white film called The Frogmen. And my mom was a librarian, still is. So we went down to the local library and started doing research on what SEALs were, and found out about what they did in Vietnam, which back in the early 80s, if you could find anything about SEALs, it was typically about Vietnam back then. You could find out about these naval combat demolition teams in World War II, and scouts and raiders. There might be a mention in a chapter in a book here or there. But essentially back then you could find the end of the internet, because it was called a library shelf. Right. Today, you essentially never stop researching today online, but back then you came to the end. And I'd go to the encyclopedias, and anything I could find: World War II, Vietnam, Korea, World War I, Civil War, Revolutionary War. I was always studying warfare. And then about age 10 is when I stopped reading made the transition from reading young adult fiction, so books that are more geared towards that age group, and started reading the same things that my parents were reading. And that's when Hunt for Red October came out. And by 6th grade, age 11, for sure, I'm reading those same kind of books. And I'm reading books by David Morrell and Nelson DeMille and A.J. Quinnell and J.C. Pollock and Mark Olden, Tom Clancy, Stephen Hunter, all these masters of the thriller genre. And I'm reading them through the eyes of an 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old who wants to go in the military one day, who's reading these books with protagonists, with main characters that have backgrounds that I want in real life. Because the hero, if anybody, even if people didn't read in the 80s, if they're watching TV or movies, that main character was usually a SEAL in Vietnam, Special Forces in Vietnam, or a CIA paramilitary in Vietnam, Marine Corps sniper in Vietnam. And now in the 80s, they're a cop. They're a stuntman. They're, whatever they are now, but they had this background. Them the skills they needed to do things in the movie or the TV show or the book. So I just loved it. I just soaked all of that in, not realizing that I was giving myself an early education in the art of storytelling. I thought I was just enjoying these stories,
right?
Really learning from the masters. And that same year in 6th grade, I read The Most Dangerous Game by Richard Connell, written in the 1920s. And I said, one day I'll write a thriller based on this short story. And that
how old were you when you said that?
I was 6th grade, 11 years old. And
wow.
That was my third novel, Savage Son. And that's the one I wanted to start with when I wrote down my 6, 7, 8, 9 different ideas when I started out of the gate. But I realized that the characters weren't developed enough to explore the theme of Savage Son, which is the dark side of man through the dynamic of hunter and hunted. I needed to introduce these characters with the terminal list. And that was very evident that that's the one that I needed to come out of the gate with and come out of the gate strong. And write something that was very visceral and that was rooted in the experience of my time in Iraq and Afghanistan, and applied all those storytelling lessons that I'd learned as a fan from the fan perspective throughout my whole life, and then incorporated the academic study of warfare and then the practical application of warfare on the battlefield in Iraq and Afghanistan. So it all kind of came together at the right time and place. But that was a very long way of saying I want to join the military since I was very young. And then I also wanted to write since I was just a little bit older than that. So.
But it's fascinating to me because there's a lot of guys that read books but can't write. Right. And there's a lot of people in the military that don't read books. And it's just an interesting convergence. You know, your mom's a librarian, so you're exposed to that stuff. Maybe did you ever ask her if while you were asleep, she was, hypnotizing you, whispering in your ear, you will be, because like, it's fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me that 11 years old, that you would have this thought, well, I'm going to write a thriller one day. That's amazing. You talk about manifestation and that type of focus. I've told the story, and I think I told it on your podcast. When I was 15, working on the splits, looking at pictures of Bruce Lee, my mom asked me, "Hey, are you going to go into the family business, which was ladies manufacturing, clothing manufacturing, and import, or are you going to be a cop or a veterinarian or an astronaut? The classic things you could be in the 80s." And I looked at her and said, "I'm going to be a martial artist like Bruce Lee. I'm going to develop my own self-defense system." I just fucking knew what I wanted to do. So it's fascinating. Also, when you mentioned Robert Conrad, and we'll talk about this another time, I stunt doubled him in a movie he was filming in Montreal when I lived there, and hung out with him, became friends with him. We got together with him in LA. He actually invited me out in the 80s to come work for him. But he was my idol growing up from the Wild Wild West. It was just
West, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. She was the perfect guy for Black Sheep Squadron, perfect guy for Wild Wild West. Man, I remember High Mountain Rangers when that came out in the mid 80s. Like I was there. Yeah. I watched that opening night. I think it was on I want to say CBS, maybe, whatever it was on. Anyway, one of the big three.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he was just
and he lived it. That guy lived it in the heyday.
Yeah. It just did you ever hear the story of how he got his break on Wild Wild West? Like no, we know him as the star of Wild Wild West. He was a stuntman, and the lead got sick. And they had everything set up, and they're, back then it was like, $50,000 a day, and their director's freaking out. And he just stepped up and said, "I know all the lines. I can do this." And they went, "Okay, let's just do it." Yeah. And he was great. I mean, do you remember, man, he was a real boxer, real martial artist, really
good fighter.
Yeah, good fucking fighter. Anyways, back to this. Excellent.
That's amazing. Actually, I think I got a lot of my leadership lessons from watching him in Black Sheep Squadron.
Really? He was
I
he
think
was
so.
good.
I mean, they were drinking and they were fighting, and he was a combat leader at a time when you needed a combat leader like him. And but I think that's the power of popular culture. That's why it's so important. That's why for our kids today, what they're watching and what those influences are, it's powerful, powerful.
Yeah.
I luckily had good ones growing up. Squadron. It was, it was Predator. It was Commando. It was Rocky. It was Rambo. It was all those films in the '80s and all those amazing TV shows from Magnum to The Fall Guy to Miami Vice. Like what a great time to grow up. What good influences, I think.
Dude,
anyway,
dude,
those
this is
came to a young person.
This is such a good point, and I put together a blog a while ago called Accidental Mentors, and the idea was, we hire mentors, but you can read a quote, you can watch a show, and it's like it did for you, like it did for me, and it changes your life. It becomes it's the spiritual juice of your trajectory. I want to be like this. I want to do that thing, and you feel that resonance. Okay, monitoring the time here.
Yep.
What was that? What was the hardest part of Hell Week for you?
It sounds, well, when you wake up and they give you Wednesday afternoon, I think 2 hours in like a general purpose medium tent on the beach on cots. There's no blankets, no pillow or anything like that. But after you've been awake since Sunday morning, and then they give you this 2 hours, and sometimes some guys went right to sleep. Some guys had to go to medical and they never got any sleep. Some people would just sit there shaking, lie there shaking, and maybe fall asleep in an hour and a half or whatever it was. But everybody had a different kind of experience there. But you're still in these nasty tents. You're breathing. Your body is just shutting down essentially because you've been moving for that entire time. You've been on the edge of hypothermia the entire time. Your body doesn't really know what to do. So I remember the smell. It was like you had to like part the air to walk into those things. It was disgusting. But anyway, then they wake you up with a flash crash, maybe some M60 with blanks at the time over your head, and up you go right back into the Pacific Ocean for surf torture, which they now call surf conditioning to make it more politically correct, I guess. Right. It's the same thing. You're lying down with your class in the surf zone and the waves coming up over and you're back on the edge of hypothermia again. So I think that was probably the worst part. Not that it was hard. It certainly made a lot of people quit, but you just have to get up, go to the surf zone, link arms, and lie there. So you don't have to, do that much. You just got to show that you have the mental fortitude to be able to take that. You got to prove that you have that grit that they're testing for. So probably that was the worst part. But then in buds overall, it sounds so strange. I hated taking my boots on and off all the time to get in and out of the ocean, get in and out of the pool, whatever it was for these different evolutions. Cause you're on the clock and you go, and then everybody's trying to get their stuff together and do all this. You're getting yelled at and getting dropped down for push-ups, meaning you're not getting your stuff ready, meaning you're not going to make the time, meaning that the instructors are going to, what they call beat you again, which means just like more push-ups and sit-ups and all the rest of that. But I hated tying my shoes. So I think I went right into flip-flops. I've always been a flip-flop guy, but went into flip-flops after that for the majority of my life, just because of that experience in buds of having to tie your boots over every day. So it sounds odd, but that's the memory that comes to mind.
Okay. I don't want your team to send me a nasty email. We're like almost at 30 minutes. Do we have a hard stop at 30? Because I got a few more questions. What's your...
Yeah, let's do a few more.
Okay. Best advice you ever received from a military mentor? Is there
there's a few of these. Yeah, there's a series, and we'll see how many always improve your fighting position. And this came from a guy who had spent the first year after September 11th downrange in Afghanistan.
Say it again.
And so it's really the first time we've been we've been downrange since Vietnam. So the first time we've been in sustained combat operations. So we've had flashpoints at Chapter 1, at Panama, at Grenada, at Mogadishu. So flashpoints here and there, but not sustained operation. And this one person was there for an entire year. And he brought back these lessons to us. And I won't say his name just because you never, I don't know if he's public about things or not, but I put them in the novels, but I put them in italics so that, that people know that it's that a lot of the things in italics come from things that were passed down, like who knows where the 2 is 1, 1 is none came from. I don't know, but I put it in italics in the book. Or the only easy day was yesterday. No idea where it came from, but it's in the book. So these always improve your fighting position. And that's one he passed on to us. And I just took that to heart, not just for military and tactics and maneuvering, but for life in general. Always improve your fighting position. Next one, he said, always exploit all technical and tactical advantages. So I loved that as well. Third one, push SA, and that's a fancy military way of saying information. So push situational awareness, both up and down the chain of command. So you're painting a picture about what's going on out there at the tactical level for those above you who are allocating assets, and then those below you that are relying on you for this information to make decisions on their own under fire. And then the last one, he said, in the absence of orders or direction on the battlefield, take charge and lead. And for me, that was always, if I threw out every military manual that I was studying and something went wrong and we hit an IED on the way to target or something like that, if you fell back on those 4 things, you were going to be okay. I mean, you never know, but you were going to be as good as you could be if you did those things. So that was good advice. And obviously I can just still rattle them off today. So they made an impact on me.
Yeah, those are great. Okay, real quick. This is the No Fear podcast. In general, and this sets up the next question, which will be the last question from me, and that is, how did you manage fear in battle downrange? Obviously, we can't stop an unsolicited thought from entering our head, like, oh fuck, this is gonna suck, or what did you do? Did you have a personal? How did you flip the switch?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it goes to what I did before I got downrange, knowing that I did everything I could possibly do to prepare myself and my troop, and for me personally, be the best leader and operator I could. I didn't leave any stone unturned. I was always reading books on tactics or on strategy or on what the enemy is doing. Anything that was going to give me an edge, that's what I was doing. My family understood. My wife understood that the pendulum was on the side of the team. That's how it had to be, because I'm taking these guys downrange. They're relying on me. Their families are. The team is. The mission is. So the pendulum was on the side of the team. So I did all that ahead of time, knowing that at least downrange bandwidth was not going to be taken up with. Or if only I had done more. If only I'd on the weekend gone and trained a little more. If only I'd got to the gym. If only I'd driven up to Riverside and done that course with Larry Vickers or whoever was passing through town, that's bringing some knowledge over from their time in the Army's Tier 1 Tactical Counterterrorism Unit. If only I'd done more. So I didn't have that, because I've been studying my whole life and I've been preparing for this specific deployment. And I didn't say, oh, you know what? I'm going to do something with my family today because, I feel like I need to. No, I was always on. I was always working. I was always studying. I was always trying to make myself a better leader and operator. So I think a lot of that's not fear, but just that like regret was not there. Sure. Like if only I had done so-and-so earlier, like that was not part of my calculus. But then also downrange, I started to think a little bit about fate, a lot about fate, because there are some things you just cannot control. And specifically to Iraq at the height of the war, I'm talking about IEDs and EFPs, and those things can be that dead donkey over there. It can be that pothole over there or whatever it is. And you can essentially look at these things and paralyze yourself or take bandwidth that should be focused on this mission, getting to and from target. You have people up in the turrets. You have some technical advantages that you're using to find these IEDs or whatever you're doing there. But you're doing everything you can. Now it comes to that worry part, and I can worry that we're going to hit this IED. Or I can say, hey, if we hit an ID on this way, this is what we're going to do. Here's our contingencies. Or if we get ambushed here, or on the way back from target with our prisoner or without our prisoner, whatever it is, I'm thinking in terms of those contingencies, so that when something happens, I'm making a better decision because I wasn't worried about this thing over here on the side of the road and just frozen thinking, oh, I hope that's not an IED. Well, guess what I'm not doing right there? I'm not thinking about if we hit it right now, this is what we're going to do. So I think that's how I managed it, by the preparation, and then by saying, hey, some things are just fate. And there's a book. It's not really a book. It's a novella called The Bridge of San Luis Rey. And they made a horrible movie about it at some point, but the book has been around for a while, and it's about these travelers that are on this bridge in South America, and it falls, and they die. And the real theme of that book, the real question of that book, is about fate and why those travelers were on that bridge on that particular day that caused them to fall to their death. There's nothing they could have done about it. It's just fate. So I kind of resigned myself to that and just focused on being the best leader and best operator I could.
Solid. Okay. There are a couple questions from fans out here. Again, here's more of a comment from Bill Hunter, best author on the planet. He's not talking about me.
Thank you.
Because I haven't written a book. We got people from all over the world, Ohio, New Jersey, Europe, South America. Here's one here, and you don't have to answer any of these. Charles Wallace. Hi, Tony. He's saying James Reese has an obvious ruthlessness. How difficult is it for Jack to convey that, especially some of the killing sequences? I can answer for you. I don't think he has a problem with it, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's my answer. You see something like this and you're like, oh, geez, am I going to get on some list, or is this person going to think I'm crazy? Yeah, no, it's very natural. I mean, violence has been a part of the human condition from the beginning of time. A lot of our stories are about passing down lessons from battle to the next generation through stories, so those lessons aren't lost. Lessons from the hunt, so that you can stay alive and keep feeding your tribe, your society. So violence is a natural part of the human condition. So I find it, and I talk about it in the novels as well, certain things as being natural. And so it's, I guess, a long way of saying I like to get creative with a lot of these scenes.
I'm going to throw
and
this.
It's very therapeutic because some of the bad guys in there, it's very therapeutic to write some of these.
Thanks, Brad. Brad, this is just a nice thing for you to read. That he never misses an episode. Blah 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 blah. These books make Michael Crichton weep.
Oh, Michael Crichton! Oh my gosh, genius! Jurassic Park and Rising Sun is a great one. I have a reading list on my website that because people ask me for book recommendations all the time. So for a while, every month I was putting 6 books out there that influenced me along my journey. But people who think Jurassic Park is just like a kid's movie or something like that, the book is fantastic, as is Rising Sun, which they also made a movie out of with Sean Connery and Wesley Snipes. But the book is so good. So yeah, Michael Crichton, genius.
Brad thinks that Reese needs to go to a spear course.
Hey, yeah, maybe
could happen. I heard that spear was introduced in naval special warfare years ago, so maybe that happens one day.
Yeah, I gotta incorporate some of that. I gotta incorporate some of this stuff in the next novel.
Anytime, man. I'll come out and visit Mike and you, and we'll go to this place again. That was
there we go. Yep,
that was a really good.
Where it is. That's a good spot.
Yeah,
that's a great spot, and nice view up there too.
So, any chance of adding dates, cities to the book tour? I pre-ordered Only the Dead edition. I can't wait.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that book tour is pretty solid right now. There are certain events that pop up throughout the year, but this book tour is about a week and a half plus another date added in New York in early June, or New Jersey in early June. So yeah, the ones out there are the ones to get to come say hi, and I love saying hi on book tour, shaking hands and saying thank you for taking a risk on me as an author and telling a friend. I sincerely appreciate that. But if people are looking for signed books, I get this question all the time. They can also call those bookstores, and those small independent bookstores will have me sign one, put it aside, and then send it. So if anybody's interested, they can track one down through one of those independent bookstores on my website.
Sweet. Okay, guys, there's a bunch of other questions there, but I'm gonna cut Jack free here because he's gone 10 minutes over. He's got a crazy schedule. Do me a favor, stay on, let the file upload. Just stay a minute on here. Those of you guys, I will go into the feed after and see if I can answer any of the questions here, but some of them are way too long answers, and as you can tell, he's very thorough when he replies. Dude, it's so good to see you. Congrats on all your success.
Thank you.
Elisa, where's the trailer for the new show coming out? Which one is it? Is it the you want to pop it up there? We'll Nice.
Nice. That's for the book. Yeah, book trailer video right there.
Guys, thank you all for logging on during the day, calling in sick, pretending you're at work. Mr. Carr, thank you for your time, buddy, and continued success. And we will see you soon.
Sounds great. Take care out there. Thanks so much for everything.
Okay, stand by.